globe. Disney, as a brand, says kid-friendly and family fun. Yet, they're also responsible for the motion picture Pearl Harbor. When we look at this, how can they possibly done that without diluting their brand equity? They did this through the creation of a subsidiary company with a different brand name named Touchstone Pictures. Today, what we bring to you is how you are going to be able to take advantage of the foreign imports market without diluting EMCO's brand equity. What we're also going to take you through today is how EMCO can use high technology to differentiate themselves from the competition and stay ahead of the competition. Hi, we're Petra Consulting. My name is Scott, and this is my partner Rob and Petra. Today, the issue that you brought with us today was what strategy should you use to be able to deal effectively with the competition in the future because it is heating up. And the solution that we are going to bring for you today here is a combination of creating that subsidiary company to be able to take advantage of foreign imports in addition to using high technology to further differentiate EMCO and to bring more value to its customers and essentially more profit to its profit centers. Without further ado, we'll get into it, starting with Rob here in the alternative analysis.
Thanks, Scott. So it's important to note that it wasn't just one solution that stood out at us. There were a few that we would have recommended if we hadn't found something wrong with them. So we call those our alternatives. And the first one being bidding on the business for more blind shipping. And we had to ask ourselves, what does EMCO strive to be good at? What are they great at right now? And the reason why we did not go with this solution is because it doesn't reflect EMCO's values property. EMCO excels at customer service. 100% customer satisfaction always. That is what we aim to do and what you guys have built yourselves up to do, and you do so well. So it's important to note in our second point here that EMCO competes on service, not on price. And with this blind seller, essentially they're getting the great products that you supply without the customer service and where your real selling comes into effect. So for this reason, we did not choose this alternative. Secondly, our second alternative, sourcing additional product lines. Now, at the moment, more products sounds like a very good thing, but in reality, we like to say they're a little bit bigger fish to fry as of right now. You already have not a stranglehold, but a very firm grip on the throat of this industry, and what you're doing right now with your products is right, and you've mastered what you have as of right now. So for this, we did not choose this. We recognize that you already supply a variety that's making you profitable, essentially. And now I'm going to pass it on to Petra, who's going to tell you about our solution.
So our recommendation for you today is to address 6 key issues identified with an overarching goal of continuing EMCO's growth strategy with risks mitigated appropriately. And we recognize this sounds really wordy, but what we're aiming for you to take away from this is the idea that you have a lot of strengths right now in your company. You are very financially healthy, and you are in a position and interested in continuing your growth. Therefore, we identified some areas which we believe are the biggest opportunity areas for you and will provide some exciting new avenues for you to pursue as you continue to grow and expand your company. So for this reason, we did choose this. Now we do also recognize that this does sound a little bit vague, so on the next slide we have outlined our 6 key issues that you were a little bit concerned about, making sure they were prioritized and identified. So to clear things up, these are the 6 key issues that we recognize with the documents you provided to us. And throughout our implementation plan, these will be the 6 key things that we will be focusing on implementing in order to give EMCO this growth strategy overall. So, to begin with, number 1 on the priority list is should you be in foreign, domestic, or both imported products. We'll talk about what that means a little bit further in implementation, but succinctly, our second point was we recognize you have some US-based competition expanding into Canada, and what that means for EMCO as this is a new shift within the industry. Thirdly, e-commerce and technology is a huge factor for right now. We recognize this is something on the top of your minds, so we'll address some of our solutions surrounding this. Fourthly, customer sourcing from the US. This regards your customers going to the US for possible products. And we'll discuss how we feel about that. And lastly, whether or not you should be listing your products through your competitor's website on that bidding process. And lastly, decreased housing starts as an overall industry trend and what EMCO can do about this to be better positioned in the future.
Thank you. So in keeping this in mind, going to our implementation phase, we get one key principle in mind, that you are about total customer satisfaction always. And with our solution here that we're going to be getting into of explaining how the subsidiary company is exactly going to work and how you will not, dilute EMCO's brand image while at the same time taking advantage of two markets. So getting right into it here, these are obviously going to be some absolutely innovative solutions here that we hope that you will learn from and take away some good key findings from. Getting into it, foreign or domestic. So as explained earlier here, and we are going to be referring to throughout this presentation through appendices at the back of your slides that do explain in depth a number of things that we are going to be going into just for time constraints. But the first thing here that we're going to be discussing is how you should create a subsidiary company going into to get into foreign imports. And what this will do with the subsidiary company and this new brand will be an avenue for you to be able to sell these foreign imported products to Canadians that are going to be going in, on a cost basis regardless of the amount of service attached. Because as in our appendices, there are two potential markets here. There are going to be customers that are interested in your unique value proposition and are going to be interested in your value-added services, but there's also going to be customers that solely are concerned with price. Now, it's tough to say what the actual overlap is or how big that market actually is, but it is possible for these two to coexist. And with this here, if, for example, EMCO were to stick just solely with the domestic policy and the cheap foreign imports as the connotation goes, were to actually take off and those products were to become popular, then EMCO would be almost essentially locked out of that market and unable to compete. On the other hand, to go straight to the opposite end and go only foreign would have great potential to dilute EMCO's brand equity if, for example, any of these quality items are not up to snuff. So what we recommended here was with this creation, you'll be able to keep EMCO's domestic goods and keep focusing on what EMCO does best with its unique selling proposition, and on the other hand, sell through another brand these foreign imports that will be able to attract those price-sensitive customers, while at the same time only risking the capital costs of actually starting that brand by only having those capital costs covered and not actually harming the brand equity of EMCO itself through a different name. So, essentially, the key goal here, when you do this, because this is going to be a subsidiary competing on price, it is going to be about centralizing the process as much as possible and creating one central warehouse and automizing the process as much as possible. When I say automate the process, I mean mainly online selling with using purchasing power that a central warehouse can have, and then shipping to companies directly from that warehouse that are willing to wait for that product. So given this process here, you'll be able to automize and remove as much cost out of the process as you can to be able to help compete on a low-cost basis while still maintaining EMCO's strategy.
So I'll get into our second point, which was your U.S. competitors. So firstly, by enhancing your unique selling proposition, EMCO can pull ahead of UofC's competitors and make it difficult for imitators. So what we really mean by this is that you have excellent customer service, and this is something that your U.S. competitors may not necessarily have. So by competing on this, you will further enhance your USP. We will discuss in the next little bit exactly how our technology-based solution will, just exactly how it will help you achieve this. But our main idea here is that the technology that we propose you implement will be able to make all of your other U.S. competitors irrelevant. So, and basically make this an issue that is no longer a huge worry for EMCO.
Thanks. We recognize that a large concern was your e-commerce as of right now, and we kind of gave a sense that you might feel like you're getting a little bit behind the eight ball. So to kind of satisfy this almost need that you have right now, we've thought of three things that we think could be very, very helpful and potentially revolutionize and really create a lasting impact on your business. So I'm just going to go through all three of them right now. The first one, a virtual showroom. Right now, MCO houses showrooms throughout BC and throughout Canada. And what these essentially are, as you guys listened to us in the case, they just show off your products really nicely and show what a real collective pile of MCO goods looks like all together. And it's quite impressive, it really is. I've been on the MCO site and I've seen it myself. What we're proposing to do is take a 3D projection of these rooms, of these en-suites and showrooms, and put them online. The technology is already there. Realtors are using it all the time to get virtual tours of the house, and it's very effective. It essentially just compiles items and lists and makes recommendations based on the customers, what they're looking at right now and their overall taste. And it just gives a very good representation of what a showroom's like and everything MCO has to offer without actually having to get into your car, go downtown, and visit a showroom. So moving to the second one, the contractor-facing building information model, or BIM. What this is more for the contractors to explain to consumers. So what it does is it creates a 3D model of a room. And it is something where a plumber or someone who installs an HVAC system can come in and sit down with a customer and say, this is what it's going to take to build your room. And it gives you a 3D display of that room and all the parts necessary to go with it. So from that sense, we're targeting more the use of the people who will be installing the goods and the clarity it provides to the customers through them. Also, yeah, so it streamlines ordering, essentially, also. And finally, the mobile app. And from an outside glance, apps seem like they might not be very trendy in this organization, but we do think that they have a good post and a good setup for the contractors. It would be a very simple app, mainly only used for ordering, and it would just streamline that effect of not having to call in. All you do is use your MCO app, place your order of the parts you need, and it goes right to MCO. So these three things really we feel can enhance your e-commerce and put you ahead of the 8 ball and address that need.
Thank you. So there's also a lot of worries about customer sourcing from the United States and how it's not really cheaper, but customers perceive it to be cheaper. Now, with our solution of creating that wholesale online retailing with that subsidiary foreign imports, you'll be able to directly combat this by having a viable alternative to customers, for customers I should say, actually going to the US and ordering from there. Now they'll have a wholesaling opportunity to be able to get these goods for cheap from a Canadian website at truly low prices.
So the question regarding the option you had whether or not to place a quote on an aspect of a website that was using MCO's product to compete in the blind shipping market. So we are saying to not make this bid and do not offer your products through this competitor's website. And the reason we say this is that MCO as a company does not compete on price. You compete on, well, things we noted you competed on were your excellent customer service and your wide variety of products and things like that. You were not positioning yourself to be the absolute lowest cost provider all the time. So for that reason, we are saying your new additions in technology and your new brand, as Scott has mentioned, serve as a viable alternative. So by implementing what we've suggested today, you will be able to gain the incremental, perhaps, revenue that you would have gained through making this bid and receiving it, will be eradicated by the new strategies that we're implementing today. That will also serve to better grow MCO's unique selling proposition, as well as strengthen MCO's growth strategy without having to worry of potentially building another competitor's service, which we recognize would not be ideal.
Thank you. So there's also the issue here of that broader macroeconomic trend of decreased housing starts. It's important to note, however, that with these decreased housing starts, and of course MCO cannot entirely affect the housing market, but in times when the housing market does start to go down, by training your management development candidates to go and actually focus on industrial processes during these times, by training them to build cross-functional teams, for example, electricians, masons, masonry or waterworks, and build these teams and give them that training to be able to help the estimators when they're actually contracting out, that they'll be able to help build more value to industrial professionals in times when the housing market is slow. So in that way, it is not likely that you'll be able to directly mitigate this risk, but by focusing on the training to allow your management development candidates and your profit center managers to go and better serve the needs of industry, you'll be able to take more advantage of industrial sales. And if I may here, excuse me, the preliminary financing, what we've given some preliminary numbers here. Of course, they are estimates. However, it is likely that with our strategy, there would be around $80 million in outgoing cash flows before you would see a positive cash inflow. And this is a risk we recognize, but just to make the costs absolutely upfront here, with this strategy, this money will be absolutely worth its weight when you're able to build a much more sustainable competitive advantage.
So to go over your timeline, to give you a lot more concrete ideas of how we envision this strategy being implemented. Firstly, in the short term, which we've defined as between 0 to 1 year, your first big move will be to acquire this tech company. And we want to stress here that you are acquiring this tech company so as to purchase their capabilities. And we do recognize this is a significant expense, but again, this is an example of where we feel the benefit will definitely outweigh the cost. Also in the short term, this was when you would create your new company for foreign imports. And again, we do recognize that this will be a lot of initial work up front with all the details surrounding implementing this. In the medium term, which we've defined as between 1 to 3 years, the first thing to do will be to create an online wholesaling capabilities for your new company. So to really ensure that your new company now has the technology capable associated with it. You'll also need to implement research and development work for your BIM and virtual showroom to ensure that again, to further increase your technological capabilities. We've also identified the medium term as being the appropriate time to release the app that we suggest. And lastly, to resell online wholesaling website for foreign imports. So to make sure that your website is up and running. And lastly, in the long term, so 3 years and more, this would be the time to train employees and key contractors in your new interface, your business information modeling. And lastly, this to release finally your virtual showroom and your building information modeling system.
Thanks, Patrick. Here at Patrick Consulting, we realize there's a risk in everything. In any strategy that we would provide, there would be a risk. And we've identified a few things here that we'd just like to go over and kind of calm open source. First, risk, new brand of foreign products is not profitable. And we understand that that is a problem. We do tend to mitigate this because we find that even if you were to lose capital, which is the main part of the risk here, you maintain your brand equity with the actual MCO brand, which is most important. And we find that there also is demand in the market for these foreign products, so that does tend to slow our worries. Secondly, customers are not interested in the technology that we provide, mainly the BIM or the virtual showrooms is what we were speaking about. To mitigate this, just extensive training of your employees can really help calm this factor down, mainly because your unique selling proposition is in your capability to sell and be good customer service. So providing that your employees will learn about it, it's guaranteed that your customers will learn about it. And it should always be focused towards the customer. Finally, resistance inside the organization to quote Blue Ocean strategy, always have a fair process. It's just a two-way communication between your employees and yourself, and communicate the change of need to your employees.
Thank you. So there are a lot of things we didn't really have time to go over, but we did provide extensive appendices regarding the financing and our reasoning for acquiring a tech company as opposed to a joint venture or a partnership or other things. So we do recognize that there are a lot of risks, and that for the most part, though, that you are able to mitigate this through effective training, honest feedback, and open communication, along with the strategy of not diluting your brand equity. We'd like to thank you very much for your time and open up the brand for questions. Thank you.
I know you advised against the blind shipping. Did you guys ever consider possibly exploring the blind shipping option sort of on the short term to help offset some of the outgoing cash flow that you've outlined in your appendices here?
We actually did discuss exploring it in the short term or possibly like creating a side brand of it. But the main problem is if you do if you do incorporate something like that with the MCO brand, as tight as it is, you do lose your unique selling proposition, which is your customer service and your 100% loyalty and the real quality you stand for. So we wouldn't want another company receiving all the good things about MCO and not let them know. We wouldn't want the customer to not know that the products are actually from MCO.
$80 million off straight off the bottom line for 3 years, a lot of money. What would be the return? What would we expect out of it?
It would be difficult to, of course, without the financial, it would be difficult to actually put a solid number on what the return would be. But given MCO's wide distribution network across Canada and the fact that you're going to be able to help build that top line revenue with that, just to be able to offer them a better value proposition, it's just building MCO's competitive advantage and perhaps in the long term not deteriorating those sales on it that your competitors are going to be coming in for to try to attract away from MCO. So while I can't give you a concrete number on the ROI, in terms of long-term competitive advantage, it would be the right move.
What would you expect as a good ROI?
I would expect as a good ROI anything above 20%.
I think our sales decline will be if we don't do anything.
We predict that it would decline slowly over time, but of course there would be a decrease. We recognize that you are in a reasonably stable position. It is the industry in which you exist in that is experiencing all these new trends and changes with which you would like to adopt a proactive stance in which to deal with. So to answer your question, we do believe that sales would decline over a period, but again, your great customer service definitely would retain your customers, especially given your 80-20 rule.
By incorporating a new subsidiary and stocking and selling foreign imports, are we really just trading dollars? Are we really just taking dollars from MCO, from the domestic sales, and putting them in a different corporation? Or is it incremental in some way?
Mr. Whitley, if I may, there's a potential room here for two markets where some customers do care about the unique selling proposition of MCO, but other customers just care about price. So yes, we do agree with you that there is some overlap in these two markets, but it is possible for these two separate groups to coexist. For the people that don't care, or don't value, I should say, be more accurate, MCO's value-added services. So in this regard, it is possible that cannibalization does exist, but there's also a natural hedging strategy to this, where what if MCO doesn't do this, and the market does take off in the direction of these foreign imports? Then MCO no longer has a strategy or a footing to be able to deal with a lot of the things that do come their way, like these competitors going and undercutting prices. So in this way, there's a possibility for both markets to exist, and this creates a natural hedging strategy.
So in this market, in the foreign market, we're competing on price. Is that right?
With the foreign imported markets, yes.
Okay. So I understood one of the rationales for not going into blind shipping was that MCO doesn't compete on price. So I'm trying to reconcile your recommendation on one hand versus the other.
It was about consolidating the two brands themselves. The MCO, the brand, and the company doesn't compete on price. However, the subsidiary brand would compete on price and would offer those things. Much like Disney offers a family-friendly environment, they're also able to get into the adult entertainment industry without diluting that brand at the same time. So this is a similar rationale and a similar analogy here to be used to be able to get into both of these markets successfully.
Question on the format of your presentation. In the appendices, you got some good material. How come you haven't got in the body of the presentation?
Is there anything you're looking at in specific?
Well, I think it would support your case stronger, or more strongly, but you've chosen to put in the appendix.
A lot of the detail work that we did was more about being able to flesh out a lot of the ideas because we do only have 20 minutes. So we just wanted to be able to flesh out those ideas for you, make sure that you can look at them at your own leisure. And as much as we would have loved to have presented them all to you, unfortunately we did not have the time for it.
That ends our